10 years ago, my in-laws stole my daughter, not borrowed her for the weekend, not took her without asking. Stole her. And 3 months ago, I found them. I can see the question forming on your face already. How does someone steal a baby? How do grandparents become kidnappers? How does a mother survive 10 years without knowing if her child is alive or dead? Sit down. This is going to take a while. The day my daughter was born, I should have seen the warning signs. I was too high on oxytocin and exhaustion to notice the way my mother-in-law, Patricia, held Emma for the first time. Her fingers pressed just a little too tight against my baby's blanket. Her eyes had this fevered brightness that I mistook for joy. "She has the Morrison nose," Patricia whispered, tracing Emma's tiny face with one manicured fingernail. "She's ours. Finally ours." Not, "She's beautiful," or "Congratulations." Just ours. My husband David didn't notice. Or maybe he did and chose not to see it. That was his specialty, the strategic blindness that came from 28 years of being Patricia and Robert Morrison's only son. I was 23 when I gave birth. Young, yes, but not naive. I'd grown up in foster care, bounced between 6 homes before I aged out at 18. I knew what it meant to be unwanted. I knew what it meant to fight for scraps of affection. So when David's parents looked at me during our wedding, looked through me, really, as if I were some temporary inconvenience standing between them and their son, I understood. I just thought a baby would change things. I thought wrong. The first 6 months were complicated. Patricia visited 3, sometimes 4 times a week. She'd let herself in with the key David had given her, citing emergencies, though the emergencies were always things like wanting to make sure Emma was sleeping on her back or concerned that I was using the wrong brand of diaper cream. "You're doing it wrong," became her favorite phrase. "You're feeding her wrong. You're holding her wrong. You're singing the wrong lullabies." David would come home from his accounting firm, loosen his tie, and say, "She means well, Sarah. She's just excited to be a grandmother." But there was something else in Patricia's excitement. Something hungry. Robert, my father-in-law, was quieter. He'd stand in the doorway of Emma's nursery, watching, always watching. A tall man with silver hair and the kind of authoritative presence that came from 30 years as a superior court judge. People respected Robert Morrison. People feared him too, though they'd never admit it. "She has Patricia's eyes," he'd say, always speaking about Emma as if she were a continuation of his wife, never of me. I started locking the door when they visited. Started making excuses about why they couldn't take Emma for walks alone. Started sleeping with my phone under my pillow because something in my gut, that foster kid instinct that had kept me alive through the bad homes, was screaming. David thought I was being paranoid. "They're not going to hurt her, Sarah. They're her grandparents." On Emma's 6-month birthday, Patricia brought a cake. Not for Emma. She was 6 months old and could barely eat pureed carrots. But for us. To celebrate, she said. The cake sat on my kitchen counter, pristine white frosting with pink roses. Patricia had cut 4 slices before I noticed there were only 3 of us in the room. "Where's Emma?" My voice cracked on her name. Patricia smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "Robert's giving her a bottle upstairs. She was fussy." I took the stairs 3 at a time, my heart hammering against my ribs. The nursery door was open. The crib was empty. The window was open. The window was never open. I heard David's footsteps behind me, heard him say, "What's wrong?" in that careful tone he used when he thought I was overreacting. But I was already running, already screaming, already tearing through every room in the house, the bathroom, the guest room, the garage. Gone. Emma was gone. And so were Robert and Patricia Morrison. The police came within 12 minutes. I remember, because I watched the clock on my phone while I sobbed into David's shirt, watched each second tick by like a small death. "Let's stay calm," the first officer said, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a wedding ring that caught the light. "In cases involving family members, especially grandparents, the child is usually safe. This is likely a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. As if my daughter vanishing through a window with two people who had keys to my house was some kind of miscommunication. But David nodded, relieved. See? Mom probably just took her for a drive. She does that sometimes when Emma's fussy. She just forgot to mention it. Does she usually leave through the window? The words came out sharp, angrier than I intended. The kind officer's eyes softened with something that looked like pity. Ma'am, I understand you're scared. They took her. My voice was steady now, cold. The part of me that had survived foster care was taking over, the part that knew how to function when the world was ending. They planned this. The cake, the distraction, the open window. They took my daughter. The officer wrote notes on a small pad. Is there any reason your in-laws would want to harm your daughter? No, David said immediately. They love her. Too much, I whispered. The first 48 hours are crucial in a missing child case. I learned that from the FBI agent who showed up on day 2, a sharp-eyed woman named Agent Torres, who looked at me and saw what the other officers hadn't, a mother whose instincts were screaming truth. Tell me about your relationship with your in-laws, she said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. The cake was still there, untouched, starting to sag in the summer heat. So I told her. About Patricia's obsessive visits, about Robert's watching, about the way they'd started referring to Emma as our baby instead of our granddaughter, about the comments I'd overheard 3 weeks earlier when Patricia thought I was in the shower, but I'd actually been standing in the hallway, frozen. She doesn't deserve her, Robert. That girl doesn't know the first thing about raising a child properly. She didn't even have parents of her own. How can she possibly... In Robert's response, quiet and measured. There are legal ways, Patricia. We could petition for custody. She's unstable, clearly. Any judge would see... I won't wait for a judge. She's my granddaughter, my blood. I won't let some foster care nobody raise her wrong. I'd confronted them that day, told them I'd heard everything, that they needed to leave and not come back. Patricia had laughed, this high tinkling sound like breaking glass, and said, Oh, Sarah, you always were so dramatic. We're just worried about Emma's welfare. Any good grandparent would be. Agent Torres wrote everything down. And your husband, what was his reaction? I looked at David, slumped in the corner of our living room, his face gray and exhausted. He thought I was overreacting. He still does. I don't... David started, but Agent Torres held up a hand. Mr. Morrison, your parents have taken your 6-month-old daughter and disappeared. They've turned off their phones. Their car is missing. They've withdrawn $10,000 in cash from their joint account. This is not a misunderstanding. This is kidnapping, and we need to find them before they cross state lines or, worse, international borders. That's when David finally broke. I watched his face crumble, watched him realize that his parents, his respectable, upstanding, pillar of the community parents, were capable of something monstrous. Why? He whispered. Why would they do this? Agent Torres looked at me when she answered. Because they believe your daughter belongs to them, and in their minds, they're not committing a crime. They're saving her. They found Patricia and Robert's car 4 days later, abandoned in a long-term parking lot at JFK Airport. But there was no record of them boarding any flight, no credit card charges, no phone pings, no trail. They'd planned this, probably for months. The FBI tracked their movements backward. They'd sold their house 3 weeks before Emma disappeared, told their friends and neighbors they were retiring to Florida. They'd opened bank accounts under shell corporations. They'd obtained fake IDs, good ones, the kind that cost thousands of dollars and required connections. Robert Morrison, respected judge, had those connections. The case made national news. My face was everywhere. Young mother, missing baby, family betrayal. The headlines were vicious. Judge steals grandchild. Baby Emma. The search continues. In-laws or outlaws? Nancy Grace did a segment. Dr. Phil called my lawyer. The story had everything America loved. Wealthy villains, innocent victim, a mother's anguish. But Emma stayed gone. Weeks became months. Months became a year. The FBI kept the case open, kept searching, but leads dried up. Patricia and Robert Morrison had vanished as completely as if they'd never existed. David and I didn't survive it. Our marriage cracked along fault lines that had always been there, widening with each day Emma was gone. He couldn't look at me without seeing his parents' crime reflected in my eyes. I couldn't look at him without wondering if he'd known, if he'd suspected, if his strategic blindness had allowed this to happen. We divorced when Emma would have been 2 years old. Quiet, quick, neither of us fighting for anything because what was there to fight for? The house where our daughter was stolen, the memories that felt like open wounds. I moved into a studio apartment across town, got a job at a coffee shop because I couldn't focus long enough for anything requiring actual thought. Spent every night scrolling through Facebook, searching for faces that might be Emma, checking missing children databases, following every lead, no matter how absurd. The foster kid in me knew how to survive, but surviving and living are different things. Years 3 through 7 were a blur. I existed in a strange liminal space between hope and grief. I couldn't mourn Emma because she might still be alive, but I couldn't fully hope because with each passing year, the statistics grew darker. Agent Torres called every few months with updates that were never really updates. A possible sighting in Oregon turned out to be a different family. A tip from someone who claimed to have seen Patricia at a farmer's market in Vermont. Another dead end. An anonymous letter that sent us to Colorado, to Arizona, to Canada. Nothing. Every trail went cold. On what would have been Emma's 5th birthday, I hired a private investigator named Marcus Chen. He was expensive, probably too expensive for someone working at a coffee shop. But I'd been saving every spare dollar since the divorce. Marcus was different from the FBI agents. Smaller budget, yes, but also willing to bend rules that federal agents couldn't. He accessed databases that weren't strictly legal. He followed hunches that seemed insane. He believed me when I said Patricia and Robert hadn't just disappeared. They'd been planning a new life. People who want to vanish completely usually make one mistake, Marcus told me during our first meeting. They can't resist keeping one piece of their old life, a favorite restaurant, a type of car, a hobby. What were your in-laws passionate about? I thought about it. Robert's golf obsession, Patricia's orchid collection, their yearly vacation to Maine, I said suddenly. They went to the same town in Maine every summer for 20 years. Bar Harbor. They talked about retiring there. Marcus wrote it down. It's a start. He went to Bar Harbor, showed Emma's photo to everyone, talked to realtors, yacht clubs, garden societies, found nothing. But then on a hunch, he expanded his search. Not just Bar Harbor, but the entire coast. Small towns where wealthy people went to disappear. Places with good schools and privacy, and communities that didn't ask too many questions. In year 8, Marcus found something. A woman named Patricia Reynolds had joined an orchid enthusiast club in a town called Pembroke, Maine. Population, 3,400. Patricia Reynolds had moved there 7 years ago with her husband Robert and their young granddaughter, who they were raising after a tragic accident claimed their son and daughter-in-law's lives. The story was perfect. Tragic enough to garner sympathy, vague enough to discourage questions. Marcus sent me a photo from the Orchid Club's Facebook page. Patricia, older now, her hair completely gray, wearing expensive casual clothes and holding a prize-winning phalaenopsis. Standing next to her was a girl, maybe 9 years old, dark hair, dark eyes, the Morrison nose, Emma. I threw up when I saw the photo. Actually got sick in my kitchen sink, my hands shaking so badly I couldn't turn on the water. Then I called Marcus, then Agent Torres, then I sat on my floor and cried for 3 hours straight. The FBI moved quickly once they had a location, but not quickly enough for me. I was in my car driving to Maine before Agent Torres could tell me to stay put, before Marcus could warn me about compromising the investigation. I didn't care about the investigation, I cared about my daughter. Pembroke, Maine was exactly the kind of place Patricia would choose. Quaint, wealthy, full of retirees and summer people who valued privacy above nosiness. The kind of town where you could be anyone you claimed to be as long as you had money and good manners. I found their house on my second drive through town. A gray colonial with black shutters, a perfect lawn, and, I'm not making this up, a white picket fence. It looked like something from a magazine, like the American dream made physical. I parked 3 houses down and waited. The front door opened at 3:47 p.m. I know because I'd been watching the clock, counting seconds like I'd counted them the day Emma disappeared. And there she was, 10 years old now, taller than I'd imagined, wearing a school uniform, plaid skirt, white blouse, navy cardigan. Her backpack was covered in pins, a rainbow, a cat, what looked like a band logo. She looked happy. That was the part that destroyed me. Not that she looked neglected or afraid or damaged. She looked happy. She was laughing at something, turning to wave at Patricia, who stood in the doorway watching like some kind of benevolent grandmother from a storybook. Patricia, who looked so ordinary, so grandmotherly, so unlike a woman who'd committed a federal crime and stolen a baby. I wanted to run to Emma, wanted to scoop her up, and feel her weight in my arms, and breathe in whatever she smelled like now. Probably not baby shampoo anymore. Probably something like vanilla or strawberry or whatever 10-year-olds smelled like. But I couldn't move. Because Emma didn't know me. She'd been 6 months old when they took her. She had no memory of my face, my voice, my love. To her, I was a stranger. To her, Patricia was her grandmother, her caretaker. Possibly the only mother figure she'd ever known. My phone rang. Agent Torres. I sent it to voicemail. Emma walked down the street toward where a school bus was waiting. She climbed aboard, found a seat, pressed her face against the window. The bus pulled away. I sat in my car and understood for the first time why Patricia had done it. Not to hurt me, not to punish David, but because she genuinely believed Emma was hers, that she could give Emma a better life. That love, twisted, possessive, wrong love, justified the crime. It didn't. Nothing justified it. But understanding didn't make the pain less. Agent Torres arrived in Pembroke that night with 2 other FBI agents and a local police presence that she kept deliberately small. This wasn't a raid. This was a recovery. We need to be careful here, she told me in the parking lot of a diner that smelled like old coffee and fried fish. Emma has been with them for 10 years. In her mind, they're her family. If we go in aggressive, we risk traumatizing her further. She's already traumatized, I said. She just doesn't know it yet. Agent Torres looked at me with those sharp eyes that had seen too much human cruelty. Sarah, I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that Emma won't want to come with you, that she'll be angry, confused, that she might even defend them. I'd already thought about this. Had spent the last 4 hours thinking about nothing else. I know. And I need you to promise me you won't approach her without supervision, no matter how much you want to. I promised. I lied. The plan was simple. Execute a warrant at 6 a.m. the next morning. Remove Emma from the home. Arrest Patricia and Robert Morrison. Reunite Emma with me under controlled circumstances with a child psychologist present. Simple, clean, by the book. But at 11 p.m. that night, I couldn't sleep. Couldn't stay in the cheap motel room that smelled like bleach and someone else's regrets. I got in my car and drove back to that gray colonial with the white picket fence. The house was dark, except for one window on the 2nd floor. A soft yellow glow, probably a nightlight or a reading lamp. Emma's room. I got out of my car, told myself I was just going to look, just going to stand outside and feel close to her for a moment. That's all. But my feet carried me up the driveway, across the perfect lawn, to stand beneath that lit window. I could hear music playing faintly, something pop and cheerful that I didn't recognize. Then the curtain moved. Emma looked down, and our eyes met. I froze. She froze. For one impossible moment, I thought. Maybe she remembers. Maybe some deep part of her recognizes me. Maybe blood calls to blood, and she knows. She knows I'm her mother. But then her face changed. Not recognition. Fear. She disappeared from the window. 30 seconds later, the porch light blazed on, and Patricia opened the front door. She'd aged. More than 10 years worth. Her face was gaunt, her eyes sunken, and when she saw me standing on her lawn, she didn't look surprised. She looked resigned. "Sarah," she said. "Just my name, quiet and sad. Where's Robert?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "Inside. We've been expecting you. Not tonight, but soon. We always knew this day would come." I climbed the porch steps. Every instinct told me to rush past her, to find Emma, to hold my daughter. But something in Patricia's posture stopped me. She looked broken. "Why?" I asked. The question I'd been carrying for 10 years. "Why did you do it?" Patricia's face crumpled. "Because she was dying with you." "What?" "Not physically, but spiritually. You were so young, Sarah, so unprepared. I'd watch you hold her and see the fear in your eyes. You didn't know what you were doing. You were going to ruin her. So you stole her." "I saved her." Patricia's voice rose, desperate now. "I gave her a good life. Look at this house. Look at this town. She goes to an excellent school. She has friends. She's happy. Can you say she would have been happy with you? A girl from foster care with no family, no support, no idea how to raise a child." The words were designed to wound. They did. But I'd had 10 years to prepare for this moment. 10 years to understand that Patricia's crime came from a place of superiority so deep she didn't even recognize it as cruelty. "You don't get to decide who deserves to be a mother," I said. "And you don't get to steal someone's child because you think you can do better." Behind Patricia, in the doorway, Robert appeared. He'd aged too. The silver hair was white now, and he moved like a man whose bones ached. When he saw me, he sighed. "I told you we should have left the country," he said to Patricia. "Canada, or further." "I couldn't take her away from the ocean," Patricia whispered. "She loves it here." The door to the kitchen opened, and Emma stepped into the hallway. She was wearing pajamas covered in stars, her dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail. She looked at me, then at Patricia, then back at me. "Grandma." Her voice was small, young. "Who is this?" I opened my mouth, closed it. "How do you tell a child that her entire life is a lie, that the people she loves are criminals? That you're her mother, but she doesn't remember you?" Patricia moved toward Emma, but Robert caught her arm. "No," he said softly. "It's time." "Robert." "It's time, Patricia. We knew this day would come. We always knew." Patricia's face went white. She looked at Emma with such raw longing that I almost felt sorry for her. "Emma," Robert said, his judge's voice gentle. "Now." This is Sarah. She's your biological mother." Emma's eyes went wide. "My mom is dead. You said my parents died in a car accident." "We lied," Robert said. The admission seemed to cost him. "We lied to you about many things, and now we have to face the consequences of those lies." The next few minutes were chaos. Emma started crying. Patricia started screaming, pulling away from Robert and trying to grab Emma. I stood frozen, watching my daughter's world shatter, knowing I was part of the weapon that was breaking it. Then the FBI arrived. Agent Torres was furious with me for approaching the house, but she was also pragmatic enough to know that what was done was done. She separated all of us. Emma went with a child services agent and a trauma counselor. Patricia and Robert were arrested, and I was escorted back to my motel with a warning that I'd violated the terms of our agreement. I didn't care. I'd seen Emma, talked to her, even if only for a moment. That had to be enough for now. The legal process took 3 months. Patricia and Robert Morrison were charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, and a dozen other crimes. Robert lost his law license, his pension, his reputation. Patricia lost her mind. By the time the trial started, she'd convinced herself that she'd done nothing wrong, that she was the victim, that I was the one who'd stolen Emma from her. The courtroom was packed, media everywhere. I sat behind the prosecutor's table and watched as they wheeled Patricia in. She'd had some kind of breakdown and was now on heavy sedatives. Robert sat beside his lawyer, his face blank, accepting his fate with the same calm he'd probably used on the bench. Emma wasn't there. The judge had ruled she shouldn't have to testify, that she'd been through enough. I hadn't seen her since that night. Child Services said she was in a temporary foster placement while they assessed the situation and determined what was in her best interest. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter, taken from kidnappers, placed in the same system that had raised me. David showed up on the trial's third day. He looked older too. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he saw me sitting alone in the hallway during a recess, he sat down beside me. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "I found our daughter. Your parents are going to prison. I'm about to get custody of a child who hates me. How do you think I'm holding up?" He flinched. "I'm sorry. For all of it. I should have listened to you. I should have seen what they were capable of." "Yeah, you should have." We sat in silence for a while. Then David said, "I saw her. Emma. The court appointed me supervise visits. She's amazing, Sarah. Smart and funny and kind. Despite everything, they didn't break her." "That's because she doesn't know she's broken yet," I said. "Wait until she realizes her entire childhood was a lie." "I know you're angry." "Angry?" I laughed, and it came out sharp enough to cut. "I'm not angry, David. I'm destroyed. I'm hollowed out. I'm a mother who doesn't know her own child, and your parents did that. Your parents stole 10 years from me, from her, from you." David's eyes filled with tears. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." "You can't make this right. No one can." Patricia and Robert were sentenced to 25 years each. They'd be old when they got out, probably dead. The judge, a woman who looked at them with pure contempt, said their crime was a violation of the deepest kind of trust, and that their sentences reflected the lifetime of damage inflicted on an innocent child. Patricia sobbed throughout the sentencing. Robert stayed silent. I felt nothing, just a vast emptiness where satisfaction should have been. The custody hearing was different, quieter. Just me, David, Emma's court-appointed advocate, and a family court judge who looked tired. David had declined to petition for custody. "She needs her mother," he'd told the court. "I'll be there for her, but Sarah never gave up. She deserves this." I appreciated the sentiment, but deserving Emma felt like the wrong word. "You don't deserve your children. You're just lucky enough to be trusted with them." The judge granted me full custody with David's visitation rights. Then she looked at me over her reading glasses and said, "Ms. Morrison?" "Sorry, Ms. Parker. I want you to understand that this child has experienced profound trauma. She's been lied to her entire life. She may resent you. She may act out. This won't be easy." "I know," I said. "Do you?" "Because I've seen these cases before. The reunification fantasy rarely matches reality. Love isn't enough. You'll need patience, therapy, support, and even then, it might not work." "I've been waiting 10 years for this," I said. "I'm not going anywhere." The judge nodded. "Good, because Emma needs stability more than anything else right now. Can you provide that?" I thought about my studio apartment, my coffee shop job, my life that had been on hold for a decade, waiting for this moment. "I'll figure it out," I said. They brought Emma to me at the Department of Children and Families office on a Tuesday afternoon. She was holding a backpack and a stuffed elephant that looked well-loved. Her face was carefully blank. The social worker, a kind woman named Janet with graying curls, gave me an encouraging smile. "Take all the time you need, there's no rush." But there was a rush. There was 10 years of rush pressing down on this moment. Emma and I sat in a small room with cheerful yellow walls and uncomfortable plastic chairs. I wanted to hug her. Instead, I sat 3 feet away and tried to figure out how to talk to a 10-year-old stranger who happened to share my DNA. "Hi," I said finally. "Hi." Her voice was small. "I know this is weird." "Yeah." Silence stretched between us. I could hear the clock on the wall ticking, could smell the industrial cleaning products they'd used on the floor, could see the way Emma's fingers clenched and unclenched around her elephant's trunk. "I don't remember you," she said suddenly. "I'm sorry, but I don't." "I know. You were a baby." Were you a good mom? Before?" The question gutted me. "I tried to be. I loved you, love you so much. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Why didn't you find me sooner? I looked every single day for 10 years. I looked for you. The FBI looked, private investigators looked. But Patricia and Robert, they hid you really well. They said you died, that you and my dad died when I was a baby. I know. They lied about a lot of things. Why would they do that? If they loved me? This was the impossible question, the one I'd been dreading. How do you explain to a child that love can be selfish, that people can hurt you while genuinely believing they're helping? I think they loved you so much that they convinced themselves taking you was okay, I said carefully. But love doesn't make something right. They hurt you, and me, and your dad, and they have to face the consequences. I miss them, Emma whispered. Is that bad? They lied to me, but I still miss them. No, honey, that's not bad. That's normal. They're the only family you've known. Missing them doesn't mean you're betraying me. Emma looked up at me then, really looked at me, and I saw myself in her face. Not just the Morrison nose, but my eyes, my chin, the way her mouth quirked when she was thinking. Do I have to call you Mom? She asked. No, you can call me Sarah if that's easier. Okay, Sarah. It hurt. God, it hurt. But I smiled and said, Okay, Emma. The first month was hell. Emma moved into my studio apartment and we immediately ran into the reality that I'd built my life around her absence. There was no space for a 10-year-old. No second bedroom, no toys, no books appropriate for her age. We slept in the same bed, a full-size mattress that felt both too small and too intimate. Emma would lie on the very edge, as far from me as possible, clutching her elephant. I'd lie awake listening to her breathe, terrified she'd disappear again. She cried every night, quiet, muffled sobs that she tried to hide under her pillow. When I'd ask if she was okay, she'd say yes. When I'd offer to talk, she'd say she was tired. The therapist said to give her space, to let her process at her own pace. But I'd lost 10 years. I didn't want to give her space. I wanted to hold her and make up for every missed birthday, every scraped knee I hadn't kissed, every nightmare I hadn't soothed. I had to learn that love sometimes means sitting on the other side of a room, watching your child suffer, and not being able to fix it. School was another battle. Emma had been enrolled in an expensive private school in Pembroke. Now she was attending the local public school in my district, sharing space with 30 other kids in a classroom that smelled like dry erase markers and chaos. She hated it. The kids are mean, she told me after her first week. They know who I am. They whisper about me. Of course they did. Our story had been everywhere. Emma Morrison, the stolen baby now recovered. The media had moved on, but kids had long memories. Do you want me to talk to the principal? I asked. No, that'll make it worse. She was probably right. So instead, I helped her with her homework at our tiny kitchen table, trying not to hover while she worked through math problems that seemed impossibly advanced for 5th grade. Patricia used to help me with math, Emma said one night, not looking up from her worksheet. She was really good at it. Patricia, not my grandmother, not even grandma. Just Patricia, like she was testing out the name, testing out the idea that the woman who'd raised her was a criminal. I'm not very good at math, I admitted. But we can figure it out together. Or maybe your dad can help when you see him this weekend. Emma's face brightened slightly at the mention of David. At least she had one parent she remembered fondly. At least I could give her that. David came every Saturday. He'd pick Emma up at 9 a.m. and bring her back at 6 p.m., and those 9 hours were agony. I'd clean the apartment obsessively, work extra shifts at the coffee shop, run errands I didn't need to run. Anything to avoid sitting alone with the fear that she wouldn't come back. But she always did. Usually quiet, sometimes upset, occasionally smiling because David had taken her somewhere fun. Dad took me to the aquarium, she told me one night, her voice almost enthusiastic. There was this huge octopus, and it came right up to the glass and looked at me. It was so cool. That does sound cool, I said, trying to match her energy while ignoring the stab of jealousy. David got to be the fun parent. I got to be the stranger enforcing bedtime. Can we go sometime? Emma asked. To the aquarium. It was the first time she'd suggested we do something together. The first time she'd voluntarily included me in her future. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice casual, even though my heart was racing. Yeah, we can definitely do that. She smiled. A small smile, uncertain but real. It was the first time I'd seen her smile at me. 3 months in, I got evicted. Not for being a bad tenant, but because the landlord was selling the building. We had 60 days to find a new place. I spent every spare moment apartment hunting, but everything in our price range was either too small, too far from Emma's school, or in neighborhoods that made me nervous. Marcus Chen, the private investigator who'd found Emma, called me on a Wednesday night. I heard you're looking for a place, he said. How did you? Never mind. Yes. Do you know something? Maybe. A client of mine owns a duplex. 2 bedrooms, yard, close to good schools. He's willing to rent it to you at below market rate. Why would he do that? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Because I told him your story, and he believes in second chances. Or first. Chances in your case? I wanted to be proud. Wanted to say I didn't need charity, but I had a daughter who needed stability, and pride was a luxury I couldn't afford. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me yet. You've still got a lot of work ahead of you. Moving into the duplex felt like a new beginning. Emma got her own room, the first she'd had since leaving Patricia and Robert's house. We let her pick out paint colors, lavender, and bedding, covered in stars, same as her old pajamas, and decorations she chose carefully, thoughtfully. A bookshelf for her growing collection, a desk for homework, posters of bands I'd never heard of. This is nice, she said, standing in the middle of her new room. Thank you, Sarah. Still Sarah. Not Mom. But she was thanking me, and that was progress. 6 months after the custody hearing, Emma's therapist asked to meet with me alone. Dr. Rivera was a specialist in childhood trauma, and I'd been sending Emma to her twice a week. I had no idea what they talked about in those sessions. Emma wouldn't say, but she seemed slightly less tense afterward. Emma's making good progress, Dr. Rivera said. But we need to talk about some things. My stomach clenched. Okay. She's struggling with feelings of guilt and confusion about her relationship with Patricia and Robert. Part of her understands intellectually that what they did was wrong, but emotionally she still loves them, still misses them. I know, she tells me. And how do you respond? I tell her it's okay to miss them, that her feelings are valid. Dr. Rivera nodded approvingly. Good, that's good. But here's what I need you to understand. Emma is experiencing a type of grief that's very complex. She's mourning the loss of the only parents she's known while simultaneously processing the trauma of learning that her entire life was based on a lie. That's a lot for a 10-year-old. I know it's a lot. I'm trying to... I know you are, and you're doing well. Better than many parents in this situation, but Emma needs to know that it's safe to be angry at you, at them, at the situation. Right now, she's bottling up a lot of anger because she's afraid if she expresses it, you'll leave too. The thought of Emma being afraid I'd leave made my chest tight. I would never tell her that, explicitly. Tell her she can be angry and you'll still be there. Tell her she can scream and cry and hate this whole situation and you'll still be her mother. That night, after dinner, I sat Emma down on the couch. Dr. Rivera talked to me today, I said. Emma tensed. Did I do something wrong? No, nothing like that, but she said something I think is important, and I want to make sure you hear it from me too. Emma waited, her hands twisting in her lap. You can be angry, I said. At me, at your dad, at Patricia and Robert, at this whole messed up situation. You can yell and cry and say you hate everything, and I'll still be here. I'm not going anywhere. Ever. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But what if I say something mean? What if I hurt your feelings? Then my feelings will be hurt. But I'll get over it. Because you're my daughter, and I love you, and nothing you say or do is going to change that. Nothing? Nothing. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said in a very small voice, I'm really mad at you. My heart clenched, but I kept my voice steady. Okay, tell me why. Because you should have found me sooner. I know that's not fair, but I can't help feeling like if you'd really loved me, you would have found me faster. And then I wouldn't have spent 10 years thinking you were dead. And I wouldn't have loved Patricia and Robert so much. And everything wouldn't be so confusing. The words hurt, but they were honest, and honesty was what we needed. "You're right," I said. "That's not fair. But you're also allowed to feel that way. I wish I'd found you sooner, too. Every single day, I wish that." "And I'm mad at them," Emma continued, her voice getting stronger now, angrier. "I'm so mad at them for lying, for taking me, for making me love them when they were criminals. How could they do that? How could they make me call them Grandma and Grandpa and tuck me in at night and make me feel safe when they stole me?" "I don't know, honey. And I'm mad at Dad for not protecting me, for not seeing what his parents were, and I'm mad at you for being a stranger, and I'm mad at everyone for telling me I should be grateful to be home when this doesn't feel like home. Patricia's house was home, and now that's gone forever, and I'm supposed to just be okay with that." She was crying now, full out sobbing, and I did the only thing I could. I pulled her into my arms. She resisted for a second, then collapsed against me, crying into my shirt while I stroked her hair and told her it was okay. It was okay to be angry, it was okay to grieve, it was okay to not be okay. We sat like that for a long time. Emma cried until she had no tears left. Then she pulled back, wiped her face with her sleeve, and said, "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, that was brave." "It was?" "Yeah. Being honest about your feelings, that's one of the bravest things you can do." Emma sniffled. "Dr. Rivera says the same thing." Well, Dr. Rivera is smart. We sat in silence for a minute, then Emma said, "Sarah, yeah, can I try calling you Mom? Just to see how it feels?" My breath caught. "If you want to." "I do, I think. Maybe. Mom." The word sounded strange in her voice, tentative, like she was testing out a new language, but it was the most beautiful word I'd ever heard. The first year was hard. The second year was harder in different ways. Emma started middle school, which came with all the normal preteen drama, plus the added complication of being that girl, whose story everyone knew. She made friends, lost friends, had her heart broken by a boy named Tyler who turned out to be dating her friend Megan behind her back, failed a math test, aced a science project, started playing soccer, quit soccer, picked up the guitar, normal things, abnormal things. The messy combination of being a regular kid with an irregular history. We fought about homework and screen time and whether she could go to parties where I didn't know the parents. About her wanting to dye her hair blue. I said no, then yes, then helped her do it in our bathroom. About her friendship with a girl I thought was trouble. I was right, but she had to figure that out herself. We also laughed at bad movies and inside jokes, at the way I couldn't cook pasta without setting off the smoke alarm, at Emma's impression of her science teacher, which was both mean and accurate. She started calling me Mom without hesitation, started inviting me to her school events, started telling me about her crushes and her fears and her dreams. We became a family, not the family we should have been from the beginning, but the family we were building day by day, mistake by mistake, moment by moment. 2 years after Emma came home, I got a letter from Patricia. She was in prison, obviously, and would be for many more years. But her lawyer had arranged for her to send supervised correspondence. The letter was 6 pages long, handwritten on prison stationery, and it was the most delusional thing I'd ever read. Patricia still believed she'd done the right thing, still believed Emma belonged with her, still couldn't understand why loving someone didn't give her the right to own them. I threw it away without finishing it. Emma asked about Patricia sometimes, about whether I'd heard from her, whether she was okay, whether she ever said she was sorry. I always told the truth. Patricia wasn't sorry. She probably never would be, and that had to be okay, because we couldn't build our lives around waiting for an apology that would never come. "Do you think I should write to her?" Emma asked once when she was 12. "Do you want to?" I don't know. Part of me does. Part of me wants to tell her how much she hurt me, but part of me is afraid she won't care. "She probably won't," I said gently. "Not in the way you want her to. But if you need to say those things for yourself, not for her, then you should write the letter." Emma thought about it for a week. Then she wrote a letter, sealed it, and put it in her desk drawer. I'm not sending it, she told me, but I needed to write it. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, I said. By the time Emma turned 14, we'd settled into something that felt almost normal. She was a freshman in high school, playing volleyball and taking art classes and staying up too late texting her friends. She looked less like the scared 10-year-old I'd met in the DCF office and more like a young woman with opinions and dreams and a future stretching out before her. One night, she came into the living room where I was reading and sat down beside me. I've been thinking, she said. Dangerous, I teased. She rolled her eyes. I'm serious, Mom. Okay, what have you been thinking about? About what happened with Patricia and Robert, and I think I'm starting to understand something. I closed my book and gave her my full attention. Yeah? They took me because they wanted to protect me from you. They thought you weren't good enough to be my mother because you came from foster care and didn't have a perfect family, right? That's part of it, yes. But the thing is, you're a better mother than Patricia ever was. Not because of where you came from or what you have, but because you let me be angry, you let me grieve, you let me love them even though they hurt you. You put what I needed ahead of what you wanted, and that's what parents are supposed to do. My eyes stung with tears. Emma, I'm not saying everything is perfect. Sometimes I still get mad. Sometimes I still miss them. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if they'd never taken me. Me too, I admitted. But I'm glad I'm here, with you, and Dad when I see him. I'm glad I know the truth, even though the truth sucks sometimes. And I'm glad you never gave up looking for me. I pulled her into a hug, and she didn't pull away. 14 years old and still willing to let her mom hold her, still willing to be vulnerable. I love you, I whispered into her hair. I love you too, Mom. Patricia died in prison when Emma was 16. Heart attack, sudden and quick. Robert followed 6 months later. Cancer. We attended neither funeral. Emma didn't want to, and I wasn't going to force her. But on the anniversary of the day they'd taken her, a day we never talked about, but both always remembered, Emma and I drove to the ocean, not to Maine, but to a beach an hour from our house. We sat on the sand and watched the waves and didn't say much of anything. Finally, Emma said, Do you think they're together now, wherever people go? I don't know, maybe. Do you think they're sorry? I hope so, for their sake. Emma picked up a handful of sand and let it sift through her fingers. I forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because I don't want to carry that anger anymore. It's too heavy. I looked at my daughter, 16 years old, wise beyond her years, beautiful and strong and mine, and felt a surge of pride so intense it hurt. When did you get so smart? I asked. She smiled. I learned from my mom. Emma graduated high school with honors, got accepted to her first choice college, moved into a dorm 3 hours away. The day I helped her move in, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs while she directed me on where to put things, I thought about the woman I'd been 18 years ago, young and scared and holding a 6-month-old baby, loving her but not knowing how to show it, being a mother but feeling like an imposter. I thought about the woman I'd been 10 years ago, broken and grieving and obsessed with finding my stolen daughter, existing but not living. And I thought about who I was now, still imperfect, still making mistakes, but there, present, trying. Mom, you're crying, Emma said, coming over to where I stood by the window. I'm just proud of you, I said. I know, you told me like 50 times today. Well, I'm going to tell you 50 more times. I'm proud of you. You're amazing. You're strong. You're kind. You survived something that would have broken a lot of people, and you came out the other side better for it. Emma hugged me. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Now, standing in my kitchen with you asking me how I'm doing, I can finally give you a real answer. I'm okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but okay. Emma calls me every Sunday. She's studying psychology, wants to work with kids who've experienced trauma. She has a boyfriend who treats her well. She's happy, as much as any 20-year-old figuring out life can be happy. David and I are cordial. We attend Emma's events together, smile for pictures, present a united front. We'll never be friends, but we're her parents, and that's enough. The media has moved on to other stories, other tragedies, other families torn apart and pieced back together, but I remember every day of those 10 years, every false lead, every sleepless night, every moment of despair. I also remember the moment Emma first called me mom. The first time she laughed at one of my jokes, the first time she said, "I love you" without prompting. Those moments don't erase the pain. They don't make up for what was stolen, but they're ours, built from scratch, real and hard-won and beautiful in their imperfection. So when you ask me how I'm doing, the answer is, I'm a mother. I lost my daughter and found her again. I survived the unsurvivable, and now I'm living the life I fought for. And yeah, some days that's enough. Some days, it's more than enough. It's everything.